Hello, welcome back for our next lesson. Today we get to take a look at section 7.2, solving percent equations. First, let's take a look at a couple of review problems. We talked about these in the last lesson, 7.1. And if you want to, let's take for example, 24%, and we want to convert that into a decimal. Remember, we talked about the decimal. When you have a percent and you want to convert it to a decimal, you're going to move your decimal over 2 places to the left. So then 24% is equal to 2.24. Number 2 here, I have 157%. I'm going to take the decimal that would be right here after the 7. I'm going to move it over to the left 2 places, 1, 2, and then my answer is 1.57. Let's take a look at 25.5%. Now, we need to take the 1/2 and convert that into a decimal. Then it'll be much easier to convert the whole percent to a decimal. So 1/2 is the same as 0.5, right? So this is actually 25.5%. So then I'm going to move that decimal over to the left. 1, 2, and I get 0.255 as my decimal. Next, we looked at the proportions and how to solve for x when you're comparing the x over a number to a ratio that is actually a percent. 15 over 100 is the same as saying 15%, right? And now we're trying to find the value for x. So you cross multiply x times 100 and 20 times 15. So it would actually be 100x equals 20 times 15. And when you work that out, x is going to be equal to 3. For number 5, sorry that we can't have the, I don't have the the steps written out here, but I think you can follow this pretty easily and you can do it on your paper as you're working through this. You're going to cross multiply again to solve for x. So when we cross multiply again, we have 100 times x. That's going to be 100x equals 150 times 50. And when you write that out, you have x equals 150 times 50 divided by 100. That's going to be your x. And you can just easily eliminate the zeros, and we would end up with 15 times 5. And your final answer for that is 75. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about solving percent equations and the percent formula. If you have this memorized, you'll be good to go with your problems. The percent of the whole is equal to the part. The percent times the whole. So remember, of means times, right? Percent times the whole is equal to the part. And today we're going to look at finding a percent of a number, which is the part. We're going to look at finding what percent one number is of another. That would be the percent. And then we're going to also find out how to calculate the whole. So those 3 things we're going to be able to find today from our examples. If we use the proportion method, the part is to the whole. So the part is to the whole. that is equal to the percent is to 100. So remember, in lesson 7.1, we said that the percent is some number over 100, or a ratio of the percent, that number, over 100. So that is equal to the part over the whole. Now, let's take a look at our first example. 5% of $115 by the formula method. What is our formula? Let's take a look at our formula. Well, first we have to take 5% and convert that into a decimal. So remember, we take our decimal, we move it over to the left 2 places, 1, 2, and then that's going to be 0.05. Then the percent, okay, 5% times the whole is equal to the part. That's our formula. So we have 5% of $115. Of means to multiply. So when you plug in your numbers, 5% of the whole is $115. That's going to give us the part. And so there we have our formula. 0.05 times 115 is equal to the part, and that's what we're trying to calculate, the part, and the part gives us $5.75. Now notice our whole is in dollars, $115. That's why our answer also needs to be in dollars, $5.75. So make sure you label your answers correctly. Otherwise, you won't get full credit for that either, okay? So make sure you label your answers. Now, the next example, okay? Find 104% of 250 by the proportion method. So remember, the proportion method is we're comparing the part to the whole is equal to the percent over 100. So if you take this proportion and you try to figure out, okay, where do these numbers go in our proportion here? Well, here's 104%. That goes into this part where it says percent, right? 104. So you leave that 104 because that's over 100. And then 250, that is the whole. And we need to calculate what the part is. So the part over the whole, 250, is equal to 104 over 100. Now you can calculate, cross multiply, just like we did in the opening examples. The part would be your x, and then you multiply by 100. And that's equal to 250 times 104, right there. And then we want to find out what the part is, right? So then we would divide by 100 or simplify this, 250 times 104 gives us 26,000. Then divide by 100, and you can just cross out 2 zeros, and the part would be 260. And that is your final answer right there. All right, the next example. Mr. Ward decided that he would give an additional 2.5% above his tithe, or 12.5% total. Find 12.5% of $4,500. First of all, we need to define some of the terms in our word problem here. Tithe. What is a tithe? The Bible commands us that we should tithe to God, right? What does that mean? Tithe means that we give 10% of what we earn back to God, because God is the one who has given us our provisions, our earning, our wages. When you start working someday, whether it be at Starbucks or maybe you get a job working at a gym or working as a fitness trainer. Maybe some of you might go into nursing or business or even work for Apple or Twitter. I have a friend who works at Twitter or Facebook. I also have a friend who works at Facebook. And if God allows you to have a job, when God allows you to have a job, He's going to expect that you tithe, you give 10% back to Him. And we put that in our offering when we go to church. So that's how we got the tithe plus His additional amount, 10% plus 2.5%. That's how we got the 12.5%. So Mr. Ward gave a total of 12.5% of his total income, which is $4,500, and he gave that back as his offering to God. So we first have to take the 12.5% and convert that to a decimal. Okay, 12.5%. And that's, you move your decimal over 2 places, so that's going to be equal to 0.125. Now we can take 0.125 of $4,500. And then what does of mean? Remember? Means multiply, right? So the percent times the whole equals the part. There's our formula again. And all you have to do is just plug in your numbers into our formula here, okay? So here's our percent, 12.5%, right? Which is 0.125, right there, times the whole, which is $4,500, and that gives us the part, the amount that Mr. Ward tithed. And that part is going to be $562.50. That is the amount that Mr. Ward gave back to God in his offering. Now remember, we're talking about money, right? So your answer must have money as well. All right, the next example.